violin of a string quartet. They are the highest pitched string instruments in the string family.
Okay. This is a viola, and it is larger than the violin, and it plays slightly lower.
And this is the cello. It's the bigger instrument than viola or violins, and we have the lower pitch.
I'm David Blakely, the second violinist of the String Quartet and also the principal violinist, second violinist of the Muncie Symphony. I'm going to introduce the two pieces that we're going to play for you today. First one being Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I'm not going to talk about Mozart a whole lot because he's pretty famous, but you should know that he was a child prodigy and he spent a lot of time in his childhood studying composition with his father. He was a prodigy on the piano as well as the violin and was writing music when he was 5 years old. What were you doing when you were 5 years old? Well, he didn't have video games and things like that to distract him from composition. The piece, Eine kleine Nachtmusik, that's German, and the literal translation is a little bit of night music. It belongs to a category of types of music called serenades. Now, what is a serenade? Well, way back, long before Mozart, serenades were done underneath somebody's window, in the dark, maybe with a little candlelight or a lantern or something. Somebody playing a guitar and singing, like serenading the lady up in the window. And then as history evolved, it became larger and they added more voices, and it was still done outdoors. And they added things, large instruments, loud instruments like trumpets, because they could be outdoors. They don't like trumpets indoors. And then by the time we get to Mozart, they dropped the singers and they dropped the brass players, and it basically became a form for string orchestra or string quartet. And so the word serenade, sera, S-E-R-A, comes from the Italian or the Latin for evening. So this music was designed to play for a wedding reception or just parties in the evening. Mozart probably wrote this piece for someone who paid him to write it for a party, but we don't know who that is because those notes have been lost. The serenade has multiple movements. It can have as little as 4 movements and as many as 10. And we just played the first movement of Eine kleine, and that's 4 movements long, but there are others that are longer. It's not as complicated as a symphony, and it's about the same as maybe a suite of pieces, or smaller pieces put together.
Johnson Danilova, and I'm the principal cellist of the Munson Symphony Orchestra. I would like to introduce to my cello. Okay, cello is made out of wood. The top is made out of spruce. The sides, the back, and the neck is made traditionally out of maple. We have a scroll here. Tuning packs. Tuning packs are made out of ebony. It's hardwood. Tuning packs are attached to 4 strings. They're made out of metal. 4 strings we have A, D, G, and the very low string, and the thickest one is the C. In order to press the strings, cello has a fingerboard. This fingerboard is made out of ebony as well as packs. We are drawing down, the strings pass over the bridge. It's made out of wood as well. And now we are connected to the tailpiece. Tailpiece made out of plastic, wood, or metal. It depends on the preference of a performer. And now we have an end pin. End pin is made out of wood, plastic, or we call it carbon fiber, or metal. End pin anchors the cello to the floor. It secures your instrument, doesn't let it move. To produce the sound, we can pluck with our right hand finger. Any finger, we can use first, second, third, or all 5, or thumb, or like this. We also call it pizzicato. Also, we can use a bow to produce sound. Let's talk a little bit about the bow. The top of the bow made of wood, the bottom of the bow made of horsehair. And right here we have a little knob, or we can call a screw. We tighten up before we play, and we loosen up after we had a busy day and we need to store our bow. The cello has a different roles in a string quartet or even an orchestra playing. Cello is like an actor. We have a main role or we have a supporting role. Cello can play solo songs or solo moments like this, for example. Or cello can be an accompaniment, like we just heard in the Eine, kleine, Nachtmusik in a string quartet. I was playing a lot of repeated notes. We call it a paddle or a walking bass. Or a lot of repeated notes. This is a part of an accompaniment.
My name is Adele Maxfield, and I normally play violin in the Muncie Symphony, but today I'm playing viola. They're played similarly, so you can switch back and forth. So the materials are the same throughout the violin family to make the instrument and the bow. And my tuning is just like the cellos. I have the same tuning of the strings, but I'm higher. I'm an octave higher than the cello. And some people say that the viola sounds like a violin with a head cold, and I also have the smallest range of the 3 instruments that we were talking about today. So this excerpt, this is going to show you my C string. so you're going to hear that head cold sound I was talking about. In the string quartet, I'm an inner voice, right? We have, first violin and cello on the outside, and then the second violin and the viola are the inner voices. And we get the little bits of the harmony that no one else picked up, right? So we back up everybody. Our job is to make the melody sound good, and we're also in charge of keeping the rhythm going as well, as you heard in Eine, kleine, Nachtmusik. Lots of repeated notes that just keep that motor rhythm going.
I'm Noelle Tredick-Gosling. I'm the concertmaster of the Muncie Symphony, and this is
David Blakely. I'm the principal second of the Muncie Symphony.
And we're here today to tell you about the violin. We love the violin. The violin actually is made of two pieces of wood. The front part is made of a spruce tree, and the back of the violin is made from a maple tree. And the sides are also maple. The fingerboard is ebony. And David's going to tell us how the whole violin is strung up. It's like a domino effect. If this comes out, everything else comes out. So you're going to explain how that works.
Well, there's this little piece of wood that holds the strings up is called a bridge. It's not glued on, it can fall over. Inside of the violin, there's a little thing called the sound post that touches the front and the back, and that transfers sound from the top to the bottom. So in essence, the whole violin vibrates when you play. And so these F-holes are not to let the sound out, but the shape is so that the edges vibrate and set the air in motion that goes to your ears so you can hear the sound. Yes, if it didn't have those, it would sound muffled. But, and then these curves in here are there so that when we bow, we have room to play on the high and low strings. Yeah, and Anna's instrument was so big, most violin makers prefer to make violins because it takes as much wood to make one cello as it takes to make 3 violins.
Very true. And my violins come in all different sizes. There are 8 sizes for the violin. They come in little teeny tiny 1/4 size, I think. 8
size. There's
this
actually
size,
16.
this is a full-size violin. So there are videos that you can watch to see all the different sizes of violin. This violin was, I'll have you do your math, okay? It was made in Naples, Italy, 16 years before the Declaration of Independence was signed.
This one was also made in Naples, Italy by a different maker, but it was made in 1947. So it's not as old as this one, but
A lot of history, though.
Italy was a big center for violin making.
In a string quartet, there's a difference between the first and second violinist only because the first violin plays generally higher, and then the second violin gets a really hard part. They do a lot of the accompaniment. So we're all nice and relaxed, and the poor second violinist has a really sore shoulder. But the violin, the lowest note is a G, and you can keep going. Keep going. I can keep going. So G, G to G, that's a pretty high range. I can't even sing that. Oh.
There are a couple of other techniques that we don't normally use in a string quartet. One of them we do use. They're called harmonics, where you just lightly touch the string with your fingers instead of pushing it all the way down. We just lightly touch, and we get a whistling sound like this. And then we have another technique called left hand pizzicato. Anna showed you right hand pizzicato, we can do so we can pick with this hand while we're playing with the bow.
So a string quartet is different than being in a symphony orchestra. There's a lot of people in a symphony orchestra. String quartet, there's only 4 of us. So we all have solo parts and we all have to play out, but we all have to listen to each other very, very well because you don't want to stick out. You have to blend beautifully and you have to get along and you have to agree on things and be compatible. Yeah, you have to be compatible and you have to be polite and humble to your fellow colleagues and always compliment your fellow players. That's good manners in the music business. Always remember that.
The second piece we're going to do is by an African-American composer named Scott Joplin. His music became famous when it was used in a movie called The Sting back in the 1970s. And before that, it sort of got lost. After he died, he was called the King of Ragtime. So what is ragtime? Well, ragtime was developed from honky-tonk piano and just playing in bars and things like that. And Scott Joplin picked up, African-American banjo picking. So he combined all that into more formal piano pieces called ragtime. And the reason it's called ragtime is because the left hand of the piano sort of stays on the steady beat. Bum, 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 bum. And the right hand does a lot of off the beat. Da, 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 da. So that's called ragged time. And ragtime is the precursor to American jazz. Scott Joplin's music became famous when he went to the Chicago World's Fair, and he died in 1917, and after that it sort of faded from existence until it was resurrected in the 70s by Joshua Rifkin. He taught piano and a little bit of composition. He was not the only ragtime composer, although he's probably the best known. And he started out, he was born in Arkansas and he traveled all over the place, so it was quite interesting. The rag that we're going to play is called the Paragon Rag. Now, I'm not sure why it's called the Paragon. He wrote over 100 rags, so try to name 100 different pieces that you're writing. It's kind of, you've got to come up with things. And the most famous one that he wrote that really paid all his bills was called the Maple Leaf Rag. The Paragon Rag, I think that it just, the word paragon means the top. So he probably thought well of it, and so he called it the Paragon.
Adele and Anna, we all hope, and me, Noelle, we all hope to see you in our next Muncie Symphony concert. Bye!
Bye!